Hello, this is Bharat. Good evening, and I would like to tell you that I made a video previously, and because of the siren issues and because of the issues with activity from Google accounts, I've had to edit the videos, and that's a lot of time. So anyway, I'm gonna record it again and see if we can do this faster than previous one. That was 1 hour and 22 minutes. I will be able to should be able to have the video public soon enough. But what we're looking at is the definitions that we discussed last time. So IP address ranges, they're basically identification and identification based on sorts of all sorts of things like geographical information. So for a given country, you could have an IP address range, and for given types of organization, military organizations will have different IP address ranges, and there is a set of classes of IP addresses, ranges of IP addresses. That's A through E, and E is reserved. That's just trivial knowledge. That's trivia because if you're a networking professional, computer networking professional, a network engineer, something like that, if you're managing a network, you will have a very different way of organization of this knowledge, and these will be things that you will have forgotten over years, and I mean, you will be able to talk about them in a very different way. So I'm not going to those things. And if you want to create a website, it doesn't matter anyway. If you want to do it in 10 days, it hardly matters. What does matter is that you may want to limit your website to certain IP addresses or ranges of IP addresses, and for this you will have to know something of this and that, and that's why I've mentioned. That's one reason I've mentioned those things here. All in all, too much of I mean, going into these things is not the scope of what we're doing here, and I'd recommend you to learn these things, but depends on which parts of the whole process you want to delve into as time progresses. Anyway, that's for this vocabulary, these definitions. So this is definitely one of the things that you want to be well versed with: IP address ranges and IP addresses. You will have a rate limiting and other security measures in place when you do talk about security, whenever it is that you actually implement those things. So personal duplicates. So the way IP addresses grew in number, today we have IPv6. So why that happened? Because so many networks, so many users, so many nodes on the networks, and they were out of addresses, and they had to increase the number of addresses. After a point, you reach saturation, and then you have duplicates, and for this we have DHCP and dynamic assignment. And over time, you change IP addresses, you rotate IP addresses, and so on. Different methods of doing so. DSCP is something you might have come across while using your phone or other mobile devices or other computers. Again, what you have to remember is that IP address is the address of the network device in your machine. The machine can be an Internet of Things device, like many of the commercially available products are there. Alexa is one of them, or it could be a computer, a desktop, a workstation, whatever it is you are using. So the network bit of your entire Lego computer, let's call it. Okay, and the Mac, on the other hand, is your hardware as a whole, MAC address. Last time I mentioned MAC address, so when discussing that particular bit of this document. If you want to restrict access to your website to users from particular locations ranging from single IP address, you can do that, of course. SSH is meant for that. You don't want everybody to be able to log in from anywhere, to at least try logging in, if not to log in. And you have to configure your machine accordingly. Your machines, you have to pair your machines accordingly, and so on. So yeah, it's there. I'm not reading all of it, but yeah. So you can do that. You can limit access to your website to admin parts, admin areas, to different users, staff, and things like that. So depends on what team you have and how you're going to manage the website and how you're going to maintain it and who has what rights and so on. This is a decision whether you want to buy a domain or not, but however tiny or big the amount is, it doesn't matter. You don't want to spend money where you're going to use the website for less than a year, for example. So I would not recommend buying a domain name if you are going to use it for less than a year. That's a decision that you have to take, and we are going to look at the decisions shortly. A server is a computer that acts as a resource provider on a computer network, which these days can be an IoT network, and IoT can be a lot of things. I've already given you an example. It is Alexa. It can be as simple as a little fly which has a computer chip on it. If that is sci-fi, I don't know, but yeah, you can have those things. But they do have such things. So Boston Dynamics is one example of a company that manufactures such products, and it has the size of a small animal, a rabbit. It has robots the size of a rabbit, and I'm sure smaller, even smaller machines are being developed and so on. Anyway, request. A request, an HTTP request is meta information requesting information from a resource on a computer network. GPUs are farms of processors for parallel operations. You should be aware of field programmable gate arrays and of application specific integrated circuits. GPUs are the latter. So you have ASICs, and these are chips manufactured to serve particular uses. One such class of uses is that's served by GPUs. So generally, you see GPUs when you're talking about video. That was 10 or 20 years ago. Today, it's about LLMs and blockchain technology and so on. So lots of GPUs rigged together, and then you have lots of it. You can look it up. A compute instance I mentioned. It says on one of the Oracle websites that it's a virtual machine. And Oracle does provide a freely developable, deployable, usable software edition of its database, and it's Express, I think, Oracle Express DB, something like that. Now they're coming up with AI solutions, and it's a different tangent. But yes, a computer instance is a virtual machine. What's a virtual machine? You might be aware of VirtualBox. You might be aware of various solutions available out there. And virtual machine is basically hardware emulated. Emulation is the word. Again, if you know anything about electronics because of your interest or having had exposure to it, emulation is not something that you would be surprised at, something that you would not know. Okay, if you're working with software like Xilinx or any other such packages, so you have National Instruments software and things like that. So it's not even MATLAB. So you might be aware of simulation and things like that. So VHDL is something, VLSI VHDL, that is where you can come across these things also. Headers have given you a metaphor, and I'll just skip that. You can read it from here. This is for homework. CLI-based browsers and headless browsers. Secure Shell, secure implementation technology originally present in Telnet, for example, TeamViewer and AnyDesk and other software vendors, software products available for use to fix things over a network, maybe remotely control another's computer. That is the idea. So I will be able to control your computer depending on how much access you've given me. So if you want to make changes to your computer, if you can't fix things, if you're not allowed to fix things, maybe in a company you do this because there are certain teams which have certain privileges on devices provided by the company, right? That is definitely something that goes on usually. Shakti processor, RASE, reduced instruction set computer, I guess. And you want to explore options for looking at how production servers are deployed. So if we do it a certain way, it doesn't have to be the way the standard practice. Okay, we are doing this because that is an option. That is definitely an option, but it might not be the safest option. It might not be the most optimal option, and so on. But it may be good enough for you. Depends. It depends on the size of the business. It depends on what you decide to do. It depends on what you can manage. So if you are the whole and soul, it is a lot to manage. For example, you'll go for outsourcing, you'll go for paying people for doing work for you, for maintaining a website for you, and you may not want to do that because first of all you have to know what you're looking at, because otherwise you'll be paying 100 units for 80 units of worth of value, or 70 units worth of value, for example. SMEs, small and medium enterprises. So that is why it is a good idea to know what you're looking at when you're talking about website development, and you're talking about investing in a website first in the first place. So there is something called the virtual offices these days. This is what I'm looking at. You should know the landscape if you're actually going to get into this kind of thing, particularly because if you're doing it as a business, you don't want to. I mean, they have alpha and beta versions and tests, and they have A/B tests and all sorts of things. That is an example. That is just an example. Okay. OBS Studio needs configuration, and so does every serious piece of software, every serious bit of software. I'm skipping these things. I'm letting you read them because I'm making another video um, and repeating this thing. Okay, so Mozilla Developer Network is another haunt apart from Stack Overflow and GitHub that I've mentioned before. So lots of tutorials there. You can get tutorials for JavaScript, for front end, for every sort of thing. You can have tutorials for Django and all sorts of things. So it's a great place you want to be. You want to spend time on at whatever. Seriously good programming language is JavaScript, and you should learn this by whatever time you can allocate. I'm not spending any more time here. Python, C Python. So Python looks like it's the easiest language to learn. That's marketing, because when you talk about seriously working with the language, I'm talking about creating binary files to be able to run them on any OS. Ideally, OS platform independent. The term is, the phrase is platform independent. You want to be able to know the internals. So you will have to read the internals. So you will not be able to go for the make process and those things. If you are aware of the terminology from Linux, you will not be able to compile from your Python scripts if you don't know the internals. If you're not willing to go into that layer of the development process, let's call it. Okay, so Python, C Python, these are things you come across. You're bound to come across if you're developing an app written for desktop computers, or developing an app that is platform independent, and so on. Again, you might know that for Apple products, you'll have to have an Apple machine. So these are the considerations you're looking at, and that's why you'd want to go for a web application like a website instead of going for iOS apps, or you want to first try out Android instead of an iOS app. So that's the kind of thing you're looking at there, because you'll have to first buy a machine if you want to develop Apple software. So front end, we'll be looking at, well, I've been discussing JavaScript. Okay, stateless protocol, I'll leave that for you. That's the lighter part of this video. I don't have time for that. Okay, so after your nth request, you have n plus 1 to n plus m. On the nth request, you decide that these are my login credentials, and you're authenticated and authorized, and there are two different things. If you go through Django documentation, you'll go through any documentation, you'll find this. You go through any documentation for Flask, for Django, wherever there is login, PHP, whatever it is, you will have to come across this. You will npm, whatever it is, not a package manager, right? So long as your login credentials are valid, are agreed upon by both the parties, client and server, you will have no need to supply a user and password every time because HTTP, as I've said, is stateless. I've used the word Sentinel from Python ITA because I wanted to give you this example where you can use any word you like, any symbol you like. It can be ad hoc. You can make it up whenever you want. You can throw it away whenever you want. You don't have to be dictated by convention unless you're looking at things like, okay, we are on GitHub and we need to follow this particular convention, let us say, or we are writing documentation for Python and we must follow this convention, otherwise it will be rejected by the system, automated system, or by a human reviewer, whichever it is. As I said, security requires you to have your own symbols and secrets, and you won't be sharing them. So you have to look at both of these things. And as far as GitHub is concerned, you have public repositories and private repositories. So you have to keep these things in mind. Don't put in the public what must not be put in the public. That is the idea. Login management, a word on it. User records on server side, so that is your database, because file is not as efficient and fast as database. That's why databases were created in the first place. And then user records on the client side, that will be your browser doing things in the background, and you might know this from your knowledge of the Windows environment. Temporary folders, temporary files on your folder on your Windows machine, Windows of your Windows 7, Vista, whichever XP, whichever you used before. If you know these things, Windows of your is my coinage, so you can applaud me for that kind of maybe. Anyway, that is all. Those things are for later process interpreters, communication threading. CLI interface is blue screen of death inspired anachronistic Power Ranger Bell. Okay, so this is where it gets tricky. Start page, start page.com. Is that the address? Yes, so it is. So image of blue screen of death. Yeah, so this is what CLI interface looks like, and that is why people don't want to use it. So all you have is a screen and text, a background and text. You may have syntax highlighting. So PowerShell is a good example. Okay, and I think you get the point. So I'll leave it to that. This is creative and this is deliberate. So it's not something that I've done mistakenly. Just as the words about Alice in Wonderland. I'm Alice in Wonderland. I'm Alice from Wonderland. Therefore, I can say Alice is in Wonderland. So we are looking at noun phrases, and we are looking at whether one is a name, one is a proper name, or whether it is a locative, to use vocabulary from the most sophisticated ways of doing things. So basically, placing Alice in a place. Wonderland. Alice is located in Wonderland. Hence the adjective locative. Idea is, can an NLP system detect that? Can Spacey detect that? Can Spacey NER detect that? NLP is natural language processing. NER is named entity recognition. Spacey provides you the option of adding to the NER vocabulary, adding entities. That is how they do with Spacey. Okay, so if you don't have this entity, you will have to add it. You can add it. Okay. MIME types, just file handling. I'm not going into that. You will have to have permissions to be able to transmit and receive files in your HTTP requests. So there you are looking at server configuration and Django or Flask or whichever it is that you're going to use to have your web application running. That is all there is to it. That is the use. You don't have to worry about any more than that. Design decisions is what we are going to look at in a moment, and packet, I'll leave for you to read this. I'll leave you to read this. Okay. The next one, path, relative path. These are too basic. I'm not going to them. And I did discuss scope and namespace, and there's this other video as well. Class, I have covered some examples of using classes. Complete Java, reference by Herbert Schild. I believe that's the pronunciation. It's a good book. And the example of a car to demonstrate the use of classes, objects, object-oriented programming, introduction to the thing is too popular. I mean, it's the kind of mantra or talisman or whatever it is called, whatever fancy term you want to use. It's the hocus pocus there, a spell. Okay, Wingardium Leviosa. So, kind of initiation into the thing. So, property class has class car has properties color, make, and manufacturer. I know that Boeing is not a car manufacturer, and it has some methods associated with it. So methods do things on data present in the class car. So class is an abstract representation. It's different from data structures. For example, in that data structures will not have instantiation. So instantiation is you define a class and you allocate memory for this object. It is different in the way it is organized in memory and processed also. Yeah. So data and how memories are organized, data and control. Control is your instructions. I'm talking about assembly language. Okay. So instructions are stored differently because instructions will be the same, will remain the same. Data, when it is the same, a copy is pointed to. Or you can have the option of copying an entire object, or you can have a pointer to this data location. And this is getting into the core of how a computer works in a CPU, arithmetic logic unit, and things like that. And we need not look at those things, but that is the idea. You will need, for example, copy. It's then Python. So memory management is done for you, and you don't need to worry about that. But you have these things in C, and you have to use malloc, and clear memory and garbage collection is done for you in Python. That is the vocabulary if you want that here. Okay, but you can define images. Okay, sorry, you can define methods or basically functionality that lets you operate on these pieces of data which are part of car. Okay, so you can have, for example, make, and apart from that you can have chassis and things like that. Lots of properties you can attach to a car, right? So is automatic or not, and has this particular feature, has GPS inbuilt, so on and so forth. This is an example. This resembles how real life, real world code would look. Okay, you will get this, for example, in Flask and Django, where you want either success or flow that is not interrupted, control flow that is not program control flow that is not interrupted. To prevent interruption of program control flow, program execution, you want to bypass the possibility of not finding an image and stopping execution or pausing execution, right? Program execution. And I'm not going into the details, but it's self-explanatory. That is why. Okay, so you do this because it's an iterator, and it's just once you get to use the iterator and gets into another discussion. Pseudocode is what you want to learn. That is all I want you to learn. Pseudocode. Just learn to write steps that you're going to execute, that you want your program to execute, and independent of the language, you will be able to work with any program, with any software, any website, whatever it is. That's how we work. That's how the world goes about, kind of. Okay, a transfer from one place to another. That's definitely the case. So for example, if you know Linux commands, you might be able to use the same commands on different operating systems, or there might be variations. So yesterday I was looking at text area. Text area has a capital T. You don't know. You'll have to go to the documentation and you find out. You'll have to find out what the actual word that has been used is. You can guess, of course, and it'll be a matter of a couple of errors. But there are situations where you simply cannot depend on guesses. Okay, so it's not trial and error where critical code is concerned or security concerns are present and things like that. So that's what I said. That's what I said about using regular expressions from the official documentation to avoid having insecure URLs or insecure systems. Anyway, that's under security. Let's move on to some of the decisions that you need to take, and I believe the video will be uploaded, and I won't have to repeat all of what I've said in the video. I will not be able to say it anyway because I'm going to make it short. I've already discussed this example. Okay, so yeah, great. Sample checklist. So when you have git clone, you just copy the code. Git clone is simply copying the code on the GitHub repository, which is a public repository available for you to copy or use as you will under whatever license it is. Depends, but GitHub repositories are there for you to copy code and run or use as you may, depending on the license. So write static, write dynamic, write server can be changed to change static from git clone on your local machine, change dynamic from git clone from on your local machine, and write server. Now to change, you'll have to read the code, you'll have to make adjustments as you require them, and you'll have to know what the software that is used in this code is. So it uses a new library, Danfo. If you don't know how Danfo, or if you're not aware of the symbols, again, it's all a lot about symbols. If you are looking at a new dictionary, for example, text area, right? So let's say you're coming from a tkinter background and you're trying to write in PyQt. If you have two different sets of symbols altogether, you will have to learn the dictionary, right? So this is the kind of trade-off: writing your own static and dynamic versus cloning from GitHub and changing the code and using it for deployment. So if you clone it from it's a matter of 1 hour or so that you can write a server. That's it. That's all you have to do. You just have to configure a server to be able to run this entire application or project from GitHub. That's all there is to it. So writing a website in 1 hour maybe could be is indeed a set of videos that is present on YouTube as we speak. It is there, I guess. Anyway, decisions that you need to take. I don't want to spend any more time on this, but decisions that you need to take include a lot. Global interpreter is global interpreter lock is from C Python, so I don't want to get into that at the moment. In fact, I can't. And code block, as it says here, you're looking at a group of instructions which are related generally, because you want to be doing things which are related, right? Generally, that's how it is. But if it's parallel code, then they don't have to be related. And parallel code is about, for example, multi-threading and multiprocessing, and that's another topic, and it takes some mathematics to be able to talk about if you want to do justice to the topic. So anyway, working knowledge of Python, looping constructs. I'm not going to the details right now, but this is a good example. It's from here, and this is here because I want to tell you that you want to look at real world scenarios as much as you can. You don't want to start like you are a 5-year old, because what you can do in 6 months, you must not spend 6 years to do. That is something you would agree with, right? So with me on. So this kind of thing, it's low level programming. You're maybe looking at memory paging. The process block here will be memory paging. The process block here will be encrypting. The process here block will be implementing a backup or data recovery. utility, things like that. Okay, so low level programming, not object oriented programming, not high level stuff where you have no consideration of how data is flowing in terms of bytes, for example, where you're not concerned with those details. Control flow is what you read. Data and control, they're just two things: data and control. And if you look at it like that, it becomes, when you remove all the unnecessary details, and that's how you can reduce the amount of work you do. Iterator, iterable, next. These are things I'll discuss later on. You must be able to work with built-ins. It is they are documented, and you should start it today if it's okay with you. Requests is a library that you must learn, and dir is something that you need regularly. Dir is like help, and repr, str. These are things that you need every time you code in Python. Okay, so type with open pointers is again the thing about where is the data located, where is the function located. That is what the area of pointers is. Keyword arguments is quarks. Arguments is function takes things to operate on, optionally also, and that's what the idea is. Eval is taking input from the user and executing it. It may not be safe. It's like SQL injection. Okay, it can be like SQL injection. So you don't want malicious code being executed without your knowledge, and you have this warning from the official documentation, pasted as is, about Pickle. Pickle is a way to store Python objects. Data structures and algorithms is a subject. I've given you some of the data structures you use in Python all the time. Unordered sets, by that I mean here is what I meant to say was, you convert a list to a set, the order gets changed. So unless you are learning, unless you have the time for this, just search it and you'll find the function and use it as it is. You can explain to yourself the code and be satisfied that you do understand what you're doing or what the function is doing for your satisfaction only. Otherwise, it's just using it because it is out there for you, and you don't want to spend time on it. So that is the idea. Classes, objects. I've had a brief look today, so I'll move on. This is another of the things that you need all the time, all the time. Okay, so whether it's C programming or some high level programming languages such as Python, you will need data time all the time. Data serialization is something that you want to learn. XML and JSON and Pickle are examples of data serialization, and this is different from resource description framework, as I've said elsewhere. You should read this. Python dependencies, libraries, these are things that you will need. So Python is not something I'm discussing. Dependencies, as it says what it is. Libraries is code modified, optimized, code optimized and stored so that you can use it again and again, and you use it frequently enough. That's why you have it as an optimized set of things for use as you need. You'll have to choose libraries. I'm skipping. Okay. You'll have to choose Python version, and you'll have to choose operating system. Operating systems in the Linux ecosystem, in the Linux world, they come in a lot of flavors. I've said this. You can edit the kernel, and I'd like to tell you that penetration testing tools aren't things you want to play around with. Okay. Also depends on where you are. Also depends on how much knowledge you have about these things. So you don't just go about tinkering with things like penetration testing. That is something that you must keep in mind all the time. Applies to Kali, it applies to Shodan, which I have said in a previous video. It applies to Wireshark, all things associated with network security. Do not play around with those things. Ubuntu and Debian are popular choices, and there is RHEL, and it is a good idea to have knowledge of at least two different flavors of Linux. Ubuntu and Debian are some things I can recommend. Virtual environments is something that you'll need on a regular basis, so do learn what they are. Libraries and compatibility, these are essential things. You will not be able to install a server without these. You'll not be able to set up your servers without this. Okay, so that's it for this one. You want to focus on functionality that is more important, so OAuth comes much later. You want to have enough under your belt to be able to deal with one-time passwords, to be able to write code for, to work with code for one-time passwords, one time sensitive tokens, JWT. Okay, that's time sensitive tokens. That's one implementation. NLP capabilities and these things, that's up to you what you're doing with your application, right? Selenium is for automation testing as well as for web scraping and things like that. And this is related to, not directly, but yeah, web scraping will be programmed against. And today, when you have AI, you have more and more restrictions coming up. So you can bypass CAPTCHA, for example. You can automate bypassing CAPTCHA. So it is there out there, and you can have a look. Okay, databases is something that you need. So focus on those things that you'll need in a sense. There's so much you can do, but within 10 days or within a given period of time, you want to focus on things without which you cannot do. So that's why I'm not recommending OAuth, for example. That's it for this one. Thank you. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.